All right, back with another one. Like, share, subscribe. Can y'all hit the like button, please? Lord, my poor little glasses. Child, and they so. Anyway, continue. Now we're on the White House, part two, the Office of Legislative Affairs, called OLA. Created by President Dwight Eisenhower, the OLA has continued to serve as a liaison between the White House and Congress. The White House must work with congressional leaders to ensure presidential nominees for roles such as the cabinet, secretaries, and ambassadors are confirmed by the Senate. The White House also has relies on Congress to enact reforms promised by the president on the campaign trail. Whether these promises relate to health care, education, national defense, because Congress holds the power of the purse. White House staffers must ensure that there's enough support on the Hill to ensure the necessary funding through the appropriations process to fulfill the president's agenda. The Office of Legislative Affairs reports directly to the Chief of Staff, and in some administrations have done so much under the guidance of a Deputy Chief of Staff, usually the Deputy Chief of Policy, regardless of the person to whom OLA reports. However, the office exercises a certain autonomy on behalf of the President and the Chief of Staff in directly influencing congressional leaders of both major political parties. The OLA often must function as the mediator among the parties and find common ground to facilitate the successful enactment of the president's agenda. Okay, come on, StreamYard, stop it. As in the case of many White House offices, the OLA must ensure that congressional leaders receive one unified message. If other actors within the White House maintain their own relationships with congressional leaders and staffers, it may appear that the president's agenda is fractured and lacks consensus. This dynamic has caused real problems for many presidents in the past. Initially, OLA staffers need to be involved in policy discussions, budget reviews, and other important meetings. They must provide advice to policy staffers regarding whether certain ideas are politically feasible. Externally, OLA staffers have to communicate continuously with congressional offices of both parties in the House and the Senate to ensure that the president has enough support to enact his legislative priorities or sustain votes. Most important, OLA must function as a well oiled machine, precisely synced. The president cannot afford to have a tennis player on, much less as the leader of his football team. Office of Presidential Personnel, PPO. The political axiom of the personal its policy was popularized under President Ronald Reagan during the 1981 presidential transition. One of the most important offices in the White House is the PPO, which was created under President Richard Nixon to centralize political appointments. Departments and agencies had and still have direct legal authority on hiring and firing, but the power to fill Schedule C positions, the core political jobs, is vested with the president. Therefore, the White House, not the department or agency, has final word on political appointments. PPO's primarily responsibility is to staff the executive branch with individuals who are equipped to implement the president's agenda. Although its focus should be identifying and recruiting leaders to fill approximately 1,000 appointments, that require Senate confirmation, PPO must also fill approximately 3,000 political jobs that require dedicated conservatives to support the administrator's political leadership. The Office of President Personnel is responsible for identifying potential political personnel both actively through recruitment and passively by fielding resumes and adjudicating requests from political actors. Vetting potential political personnel by conducting political background checks and reviewing any clearance and fitness assessment by departments and agencies, making recommendations to the president and to other appointment authorities on behalf of the president, identifying programmatic political workforce needs early and developing plans, maintaining a strong relationship with the also Office of Personnel Management, OPM, both for operational purposes and to efficiate the President's direct Title V authorities. The President is in charge of the federal workforce and exercises control primarily, principally, by working through the Director of the Office of Personnel Management, training and connecting political personnel, playing bad cop in a way that other White House offices cannot, including servicing as the office that takes direct responsibility for firings and hirings, serving as personal link between the conservative operations and the executive branch. In most administrations, the PPO will staff more than 100 positions during a transition and thousands of non career positions during the president's first term. Direct authority and strong relationship with the president are necessary attributes for any PPO director. Historically, PPO has the direct review and control of personal files, including security clearance dossiers. At the highest level, PPO is tasked with long term strategic workforce development. Office of Political Affairs, OPA. The OPA is the primary office within the executive branch for managing the president's political interests. Although its specific functions vary from administration to administration, the OPA typically serves as the liaison between the president and associated political entities, national committees, federal and state campaigns, and interest groups. Within legal guidelines, the OPA engages in outreach, conducts casework, and if the president is up for re-election, assists with his campaign. The OPA may also monitor congressional campaigns, arrange president visits with other political campaigns, and recommend campaign staff to the Office of President Personnel for service in the executive branch. Because nearly all White House activities are in some way inherently political, the OPA needs to be aware of all presidential actions and activities, including travel, policy decisions, speeches, nominations, and response to the matters of national security, and consider how they might affect the president's image. The OPA must therefore have a designated staffer who communicates not only with the other White House offices, but also with the cabinet and executive branch agencies. Okay. Office of Cabinet Affairs, OCA. The OCA role has changed to some degree over the course of various administrations, but its overriding function remains the same: to ensure the coordination of policy and communication between the White House and the Cabinet. Most important, the OCA coordinates all cabinet meetings with the president. It should also organize and administer regular meetings of the deputy secretaries because they also typically serve vital roles in the departments and agencies and further often become acting secretaries when cabinet members resign. There should be one cabinet secretary who reports to the chief staff's office, either directly or through a deputy chief, according to the chief's preference and focus. Excuse me. The cabinet secretary maintains a direct relationship with all members of the cabinet. The ideal cabinet secretary will have exceptional organizational skills and be a seasoned political operative or attorney because many cabinet officials have been former presidential candidates, governors, ambassadors, and members of the Congress. The ideal candidate should also possess the ability to interact with and persuade accomplished individuals. Office of Public Liaison, OPL. The OPL is critically important in building coalitions and support for the president's agenda across every aligned social, faith-based, minority, and economic interest group. It is a critical tool for shaping public opinion and keeping myriad supporters as well as frenemies and opponents alike who are within reach better informed. The OPL is a large office. It should have one director who reports to the chief of staff's office, either directly or through a deputy, according to the chief's preference and focus. Director must maintain relationships not only with other White House officials, but also with the senior staff of every cabinet department and agency. Since a president's agenda is always in motion, it is important for the OPL to facilitate listening sessions to receive the views of various leaders and members of key interest groups. The OPL director should come from the president's election campaign or Capitol Hill, but should not have been deeply entrenched connections to a K Street entity or any other political stakeholder. Some prior relationships can create real or perceived biases toward one group or another. That's true. OPL staffers work with more external and internal parties than any other White House staff. In turn, they must be effective communicators and initiative takers. They must also be able to influence, persuade, and most important, listen to various stakeholders and ensure that they feel heard. Office of Governmental Affairs, IGA. The IGA connects the White House to the state, county, local, and tribal governments. I didn't know that. In other words, it is the one stop shop for disseminating an administrator's agenda to all non federal government entities. The IGA should have a director to whom one or two deputy directors report. The director must ensure that the White House remains connected to all non federal entities. The interests and perspectives of these entities are represented in policy discussions. Organize events with the West Wing. The IGO are staffed in a variety of range, but two arrangements are most common. Each deputy and that deputy staffers are responsible for a type of government. A group of staffers is responsible for a specific geographical region of the country. The IGA represents the interests and perspective of non-federal governmental entities, but its primarily job is to make sure that these entities understand an administrator's agenda and ultimately support it. White House Counsel. As the federal government has ballooned in the size over the past century, it has become increasingly difficult for the president alone to direct his agenda across the executive branch. Three White House policy councils have come into existence. Policy coordination. The primary role of policy council is to coordinate development of administrative policy. This frequently includes developing significant legislative priorities, coordinating policy decisions that impact multiple departments and agencies, and at times coordinated policy decisions within a single department or agency. Policy advice. By virtue of working in the White House, the heads of the three policy councils will also function as independent policy advisors to the president. This aspect of the role will vary depending on the individual in this position and the president's governing philosophy. Okay, policy implementation. The Policy Council also manage and mediate the implementation of previous policy decisions. Implementation of new statute of or an executive order frequently takes years and involves many distant and more granular policy decisions along the way. It is essential to have centralized process for evaluating and coordinating these decisions, especially if they involve more than one cabinet department or agency. Policy Coordinating Committee, PCC, I'm sorry. A PCC is led by special assistant to the president from the Policy Council and includes political assistant secretary level experts from the relevant departments, agencies, or offices. The purpose is to determine whether consistency exists, clearly identify where there are differing opinions, and develop options for resolving the remaining questions. Deputies Committee, DC. A DC is a meeting of presidential appointed executives chaired by Policy Council's deputy assistant to the president and relevant deputy secretaries. It evaluates the options produced by the PCC and frequently directs the PCC to add, expound, or reevaluate an option or even to reach a compromise and resolve an issue. Principals Committee, PC. When questions are not resolved by a DC, the Director of Policy will chair a PC, which is attended by relevant cabinet secretaries and senior White House political staff. This is the final opportunity for the president's most senior advisors to discuss the question. Make sure that each principal's position is carefully understood and see whether consensus or a compromise might be reached. Despite having seemingly clear and separate portfolios, the three policy councils frequently have areas of overlap, which can result in confusion, duplication, or conflict. For example, there are areas of immigration and border security, either NSC or DPC, healthcare, energy, environmental and trade, and international economic policy. Identifying these potential problematic areas and assigning policy responsibility to only one council where possible will help speed up the policy coordinator process. National Security Council. It's intended to be an interdepartmental body within the White House that can set national security policy with an established statute. Statutory members and advisors who are currently part of the NSC, including the President and VP, Secretaries of State, Defense and Energy, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Director of National Intelligence. The NSC staff, let me see. Special attention should be given to the use of details to the staff of the NSC. In recent years, the NSC staff size has been right-sized from a peak of 400 in 2015 down to about 100 to 150 professional members. The next administration should try to limit the number of detailees to ensure more direct presidential control. How many minutes? Okay, I'm going to go about 5 more minutes. National Economic Council. The NEC was established in 1993 by executive order and has four functions: to coordinate the economic policy making process with respect to domestic and international economic issues, to coordinate economic policy advice to the president, to ensure the policy decision and programs are consistent with the president's stated goals and that those goals are being effectively pursued, to monitor implementation of the presidential economic policy agenda. The NSC director coordinates and implements the president's economic policy objectives by working with cabinet secretaries, their departments, and multiple agencies. And I'm going to skip some of this stuff. Domestic Policy Council. The Domestic Policy Council consists of advisors to the president or non-economic domestic policy issues, as well as international issues with a significant domestic component, such as immigration. It is one of the primary policy councils serving the president, along with the NSC and the NEC. Several areas will be especially important as the DPC works to develop a well-defined domestic policy agenda, one of a promotion of innovation as a foundation for economic growth and opportunity. The president should establish an economic opportunity working group chaired by the DPC director to coordinate the development of policies that promote economic opportunity. Now, hey y'all, Office of the VP. In modern U.S. history, the VP has acted as a significant advisor to the president. Once elected, the VP helps to promote and, in many instances, put into place and execute the president's agenda. So, as Jezebel says, that she can't distance herself from the beast at all. They one and the same. And she said she wouldn't change anything in her policy. Bad mistake. Nothing she would do over. Bad mistake. So you one and the same. Okay, now anyway, just a little rant. The president may determine the inclusion of the VP staff in the White House meetings, including Policy Coordinating Committee, Deputies Committee, and Principals Committee discussions. Recent presidents have decided to give VP space in the West Wing. The VP's proximity to the president, as well as chief of staff and additional senior advisors, make his or her role a powerful one in the West Wing. The VP is also charged with breaking the votes in Senate and in recent years has served abroad as an ambassador for the White House and more broadly the United States. announcing administrative priorities and coordinating with the heads of state, other foreign government officials. The VP, as the president of Senate, could be the president's emissary to the Senate. Office of First Lady or Gentleman. The First Lady or Gentleman plays an interesting role in the formation, implementation, and execution of policy in concert with the President. Active and interested first spouses often champion a select number of signature issues, whether they be thorny social issues or deeper policy issues. One advantage of the first spouse taking on a hot button social issues that any political backlash will be less severe than it would be for the president. The first spouse normally appoints a chief of staff who has enough assistance to support the spouse's activities in the East Wing of the White House. This group works exclusively with the first spouse and senior members of the White House, along with EOP personnel, to implement and execute the first spouse's priorities, which reflects the first spouse's passions and interests and often identified as important in discussions with the president. Executed well, they can be strategically useful in accelerating the administrator's agenda. Past East Wing initiatives have focused on such issues as combating bullying, fighting drug abuse, promoting literacy, encouraging physical education for young adults and children. The first spouse is afforded significant resources. His or her staff also works with the president's policy team, members of cabinet, and other EOP staff. All right, so I'm going to stop there. And when I get back to, we're going to be dealing with the executive office of the president of the United States. So far, I only had a few issues with Project 2025. Most of that they saying is just lies. So far, I don't have a problem with it. I had some issues if you look at the couple videos that I did on it. But so far, learning about the function, actually, I'm learning a lot from reading this, and I'm going to continue to read this. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, please. I'll be right back with the new world order that we're in. We're waiting for the Antichrist to come on out. All right.